here again, and I'm here to talk about the coyote hazing study. And I just want you to know I have a little presentation guilt about this because I feel like the people who should be presenting this is our Stuart and Sharon. They put a lot of work and energy into this, as well as a lot of folks from Jefferson County Open Space and City of Lakewood and their Parks and Recreation program, because they really did a lot of the work talking to the community. So we wanted to study hazing. Because how many of you, as managers or people that are on the front line, you recommend to residents or citizens or whomever that hazing is a great tool to use when it comes to coyote conflict? How many of you do it? Excellent. All right. So one of the things we wanted to look at is how we use coyote hazing at the community level. So this is key because a lot of folks, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, there are managers that have sort of coyote hazing teams, and they come out as part of the agency or the organization, and they do the hazing on behalf of citizens. Well, what we wanted to do is talk about hazing at the citizen or the resident or the community level specifically. And is that a great thing to reduce human coyote conflict in urban areas? So why study hazing? Again, I just touched on it. It's one of those things that's widely accepted by managers as an effective tool for reducing human coyote conflict in urban environments. However, when you start talking about hazing, it's really interesting because it's variously defined, even by the managers that use it, and it's variously implemented by managers. So again, Stan Garrett likes to tell the story about in Chicago, he went out and got his people like the best, cool, airsoft guns money could buy, and they were going to haze coyotes, and he goes, we've never even seen one, you know. So they as at the manager level, by the time they're deployed, oftentimes the coyote's gone. Also, it's largely misunderstood by residents. So I want to talk about, where is she? Great story this morning from Highlands Ranch, talking about hazing, and Laura is talking to a resident about hazing, and the resident's like, cool, I need to buy some next time I'm at the store. Where do I pick that up? It's like, no, it's not something you do, right? So there's misunderstanding at the resident level. And then it's actually very, very difficult to measure the effectiveness of hazing, as we'll talk about. This study was very difficult on a lot of levels. So I want to talk about the wallpaper effect. And I want to talk very specifically about something Stuart and I witnessed as we were loitering near Crown Hill Park. I wasn't wearing this, so I could effectively loiter without being detected. And we were kind of standing there watching activities going on at Crown Hill Park, and it was probably like 6 o'clock in the morning, right? We're standing there on the high school side, and there's a coyote that had just come out of the refuge area, and it plops its rear end down about 5 feet from the trail. No big deal. Nobody's around. But here comes this adult male jogger, and he's coming down the path, and he is headed straight for where the coyote is kind of parked, sitting right next to the path. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is not good. So the coyote's sitting there, here comes the jogger. The jogger just looks at the coyote and just jogs right past it. And the coyote doesn't even look at the jogger. The coyote's like, I think my wallet's over here somewhere. You know, the whole interaction was just a non-thing. Now, does that strike anyone as weird, troubling, or is it just okay, rainbows and unicorns and glitter, and we all move on? All right, so one of the things that I found that interaction that I watched alarming, just like I find this picture alarming. So this is from one of our Coyote Watch volunteers. He's a regular at Crown Hill Park. He took this photo. As you can see, there's a coyote. This is Share the Trail on a wildlife scale. You know, we've got the coyote heading down the trail, and a dude, I don't know if that's a dog do he's carrying, that's big, or groceries. But anyway, they're all kind of walking past each other, and it's, again, no big deal. And Stuart already touched on this. Thank you for the great lead into this, that there is this level of sort of disregard for each other. That in urban environments, it's just, hey, there's a coyote. Yeah, they're great. Just ignore it. It's fine. And the coyote, hey, there's a human. Ignore him. It's fine. So this is, to me, this is alarming. This is like, oh my goodness, we're headed down this road that I'm not necessarily comfortable with as a manager. But like I said, a lot of folks look at this and think, this is okay. This is what coexistence looks like. So there's this idea of how do you even tell people, there's this big question of when do I haze? Is this where I haze? Or is this okay? So there's a lot of levels of complexity to hazing. And that's one of the things that makes this really tough. But when Stuart and I saw that interaction where the jogger went right past the coyote and the coyote couldn't have cared less, was humans are like wallpaper to these guys. We just no longer, we're just like the flowers on the wall. You know, they don't even see us anymore. And so we need to come out of the wallpaper and get in their face and teach them that we're something to be avoided. So we can again, I find this alarming, other folks may not. I want to avoid this. I don't think this is okay, this scene right here. So, so one possible solution, again, is training. And the training happens both on the coyote side and the human side. So when we haze, the idea is we're teaching coyotes, and a lot of us do this with our pets, we're teaching aversive conditioning. Don't go there, don't do that, don't be here right now because I don't like it, and here's some negative input to teach you not to do that. We also have to train humans. Why do we have to train humans in hazing? Ha, someone laughed. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? So because a lot of humans, again, don't want to haze, there's a lot of, and we'll go into those details in a minute, but you've got to train on both sides. So, can humans influence coyote behavior? Thank you, Stuart, for already covering this. There's a lot of things in urban environments. We talk about food conditioning, and this isn't actually the act of feeding, which is some food conditioning, but this is actually, we talk about in suburban and urban environments, we're at peak bunny and peak squirrel, right? So there's more rabbits and more squirrels and more mice and stuff like that per block than there would be in sort of a rural area. So there's some food conditioning, there's watermelon, there's exotic fruits, all those things that we talked about in the food study that would encourage a coyote to, hey, urban environment's not that bad. There's a lot of food here, maybe I'll hang out. Constant exposure to humans and pets can lead to a state of tolerance or habituation, depending on how you want to use those words. And then aversive conditioning, ideally hazing teaches coyotes to avoid humans or avoid certain situations or places. So these are some ideas of how humans can change coyote behavior, as we hope. So, what is hazing? So this is a definition I pulled out of, I think it was Colorado Parks and Wildlife's documents about hazing, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the idea, again, is that it's aversive conditioning. It's usually spatial or contextual. You know, I don't want a coyote in my backyard, so I'm going to haze it out of my backyard. I'm in open space. The coyote has engaged me and is walking towards me. It shouldn't do that. I'm going to haze it away from me. The coyote is following me and my dog while we're walking. I don't like that. I'm going to haze it away from me. It is, by definition, not meant to harm the coyote or the person or any property in the process. So one of the things that people have a really hard time distinguishing is that hazing is not harassment. In fact, I've heard professionals mix the two words in presentations. Let's harass coyotes and teach them. I'm like, no, harassment is actually a legal term, and it's not okay. It's against the law. So I'm going to be very clear that we're not talking about harassment of wildlife here. We're talking about aversive conditioning where no one gets hurt, but the idea is you teach that animal a lesson, and hopefully teach the human a lesson at the same time. So one of the challenges on the coyote, there's actually several challenges on the coyote side, and one of the really important ones is to ask ourselves the questions, are coyotes too smart for hazing? And what do I mean by that? Coyotes, how many of you know coyotes are pretty smart creatures, okay? And one of the things we talked about when I worked for City of Aurora is we believe some of the coyotes would catch on to who hazes and who doesn't. So I would pull up in my white minivan and it was like cockroaches. You know, they were just like out. Because they know that chick's going to get out of that van and she is going to just. But then there's other people that refuse to haze or don't want to haze or for whatever reason haven't tried it. And the coyotes, I think, can sort of figure that out. I don't know. I believe that to be true. That's completely anecdotal. Do coyotes figure out who's doing the hazing or not? Can hazing have a lasting community-wide effect? So one of the questions is if people are hazing and we're coming out of the wallpaper and we're getting in coyotes' faces, do they learn that socially? Does that become part of the culture? Hey, humans, they're weird. They do stuff. They yell. They scream, and we should leave them alone. Could that become part of this culture that Stuart's talking about if we all did it, if we all engaged in it, and if we did it effectively? Or should it be seen more as a personal safety tool? That, you know, for me, because I sometimes don't follow my own advice, I have gotten my dog and I into some pretty intense coyote-human situations. And I have used hazing each time to alleviate the situation. And I can tell you that my dog was not ever off leash, but she gets out ahead on her little extendo leash. And, you know, by using hazing, I was able to get that situation to where it was a safe situation. Had I not known how to haze, I'm not sure how things would have worked out. So it's, to me, again, great personal safety tool. Don't know if it has this lasting community-wide effect. Also, I don't know if you guys can see this, and Sean, this was sent to us by one of our volunteer park patrollers. So if you can't, I'm sorry? Oh, a resident, okay. Okay, so this was sent to us by a woman whose dog was actually attacked on leash during the day at Crown Hill Park by a coyote. So if you can't see him, he's right over here next to the trail. like 2 feet from the trail, just lying in wait at Crown Hill Park. How many of you have been to Crown Hill Park? It's our most visited park in Jefferson County open space. So the question that we also have is there a point, and this is one of the challenges of hazing, on the coyote side where a coyote's behavior is so dangerous and so not okay that hazing isn't really going to work anymore on that individual animal? Is it beyond hazing as far as a tool, a management tool for that particular bad actor? And I call this guy a bad actor because at that point I think it had attacked 3 different dogs on leash, short leash, during the day at Crown Hill Park. So that's an individual bad actor, and that was a photo that the woman whose dog attacked took. That's pretty amazing. And then also, we don't really truly understand what leads to that individual bad actor behavior. So where you have a coyote that's behaving, I call it abnormally, where it's attacking pets on leash and attacking people, what leads to that? What are the factors that take a coyote there, and can hazing truly address those factors, or are they beyond hazing? Are they related to disease or initial personality, or are they related to the social experiences that coyote has had? So those are all things that are challenges on the coyote side. Challenges on the human side. Humans are really challenging, okay? So one of the things is people absolutely hate the word haze. They hate it. We know that from our study. And why do people hate that word so much? It was just, someone was just sent to jail, I think, in Texas for that banned hazing incident. So there's just a lot of negative press. This came straight from our research, our survey. Somebody said hazing is a pretentious and confusing word to use. Thank you. All right, so that was one comment. I put this picture up here of this grown man dressed as a devil. He was wearing tights, and he, during the USA Pro Cycling Challenge, was running around on the street waving his little pitchfork. People will do that. But then you have people that say, you know, I'm uncomfortable clapping my hands and raising my voice in public. So what we need is him to do all the hazing, because he's apparently very comfortable with being silly in public. So that was another comment from the survey, and also something I already touched on. What if not everyone is willing to haze? So you've got people who just flat out refuse. For whatever reason, they don't want to look silly, they don't believe in it, they think it's mean. They think the coyote's going to attack them if they haze. So there's all these reasons why they don't want to do it. And if not everyone's doing it, then can you have an effective community hazing effort? That's one of the challenges. And then, this is the really important one, hazing impacts are really difficult to isolate and measure, okay? So one of the things we do know from the citizen science data, and Stuart, thanks for all those late nights you did analyzing that, is that as we know from some of our citizen science, as people are doing these interactions with coyotes and trying to haze, we are getting a measure of how the coyote's responding to that. But overall, it's very difficult to isolate and measure that for a long-term effect. So one of the things I want to come clean on right off the bat is, as I'm talking about this, we're going to be really kind of focusing on the human side of this and what this particular study came up with on the human side, okay? So this is one from Aurora, and I love this woman because we put up some signs. We're like, there's coyotes in this area, you're going to want to carry something. She's like, got a baseball bat. She's like, oh yeah. So I'm thinking, I don't even want to walk past her, and I'm a human. So you get different levels of buy-in, and I think that's super important to think about because, again, I'm talking about, are coyotes so smart that they can I mean, they're not going to mess with her maybe, or she's ready if they do. The guy in the devil suit, probably he behaves. But then there's, again, the folks that are like, I don't want to do that. That makes me look silly. So the overall goal was for this study, in my mind, because I'm not a PhD researcher, I'm like a boots-on-the-ground girl, I wanted to create a community-based aversive conditioning program that could be repeated at the manager level. So in other words, what we did or what we implemented, another manager, say they have a hot spot, they could try it and see if it works, you know, and try hazing at the community level and have it be repeated, okay? So the way we designed the study was treatment and control. It's pretty classic, where we had some hazing sites where we did a pre-treatment, we gathered reports from people, we did a treatment where we did hazing education, signs telling people to haze coyotes, and then post-treatment, we had people report back, and we had signs asking them to report back. On the control sites, we simply skipped the hazing treatment or the signs indicating that people should haze. So again, we encouraged public reporting. We covered a lot of our research sites with these signs saying, please participate. If you see a coyote, let us know. What we were trying to do was establish baseline coyote behavior. What we learned is human behavior. People just don't like to report stuff. So we didn't get a lot of reports. We also put these signs all over the place with the little flyers in there so they could come in very easily, report online. A lot of folks chose not to do it. Here's what that looked like. So again, we asked people to report back so we could get a baseline of coyote behavior in that area prior to the hazing treatment. So then, on the study areas that had the treatment, then we changed all the signage and we said, haze coyotes. You know, and we had those signs up for a while, said aggressively haze coyotes when you see them, and even had some advice. We even created a hazing video, so if people didn't know how to do it, they could scan this QR code and it would take them to the hazing video. More on that in a second. But basically, we tried to set people up for success. Hey, if you see a coyote, haze it. If you don't know how to do it, here's some tips. Think about it. We had these really nice sandwich board signs, and then we had the other signs, and so those were on the treatment sites. So again, we made a hazing education video because all along we figured we're going to need this for this research project, but also it just has come in handy, and I was really happy to see when I pulled this off the internet. This is now over 10,000 views. But don't ever put things on the internet if you're soft-shelled, because there's a lot of haters out there. So one of the things that I do want to point out is I thought this was a lovely comment. No joke, if you live in an area with coyotes, watch this. Here's another one. Are you ever going to actually say anything? So people had various, feelings about the video. I did hear through the grapevine that it was called cheeky, which I wear as a badge of achievement. To be a government employee who created something cheeky, I'm down with that. So anyway, this video was meant to give people the tools for hazing. If you haven't seen it, you can just Google how to haze a coyote. It's 8 minutes long, and it was made by comedians instead of government wonks. So it is kind of interesting. So the other thing we did is a public survey. So what we did is, following the hazing treatment, we asked people a series of questions to say, hey, did you see our signs? Did it change your behavior? Did you know about hazing? Would you haze a coyote? Did you haze the coyote when you saw it? So we basically sent it out to different email groups that I think we had, and then also we did on-site surveys. So we had people standing there with clipboards and asking people questions. And that was where we tortured Stuart and Sharon, because they had to walk up to people and ask questions. Oh, you didn't? Sharon's like, I didn't even do that. So this is one of the questions. If you see a coyote at Crown Hill in the future, would you haze it? So we did these surveys. We also tried looking at some camera traps, because one of the thoughts we had is it's very difficult to measure the impacts on coyotes, but one of the thoughts we had was these coyotes that are being hazed, one of the things they might do is, if they truly are trying to avoid us, they might try to avoid human areas like the trail. And they might shift more of their activity to night, because these parks are mainly day use parks. Not to say that we don't have illegal use in our parks, but they're mainly day use parks. So what you would expect to see, based on those sort of theories, is that you would have less use of the trail. Okay, so you have this treatment area, or you have your control, and then if you've got a hazing site, the coyote use of the trail would go down, because now they're getting picked on by people in aversive conditioning, so they're going to avoid those trail areas. We'll talk a little bit about whether that's truly a valid thing to do or not, but it was just something we thought, oh my gosh, this is so hard to measure. How do we look at this? This is one way we could possibly do this. And then also looking at the day presence versus night presence. Again, if we're coming out of the wallpaper and we're getting in these coyotes' faces, wouldn't it be interesting to think that, yeah, maybe they move more of their activity or their visibility to night? So that might be another way to measure whether these coyotes, whether this hazing is having an impact. So what we found, and just to cover the study sites, we did study sites in Broomfield. So Broomfield was a huge participant. And we looked at some areas in Broomfield that are urban areas, and I think we had a den site on one of these. So we've got these Broomfield sites, as well as 4 sites in Jefferson County. So we looked at Broomfield first. Broomfield was kind of our beta test, and there were some things, we made some dramatic changes after the Broomfield beta test because things were just too confusing for people. So we moved to just strictly looking at the hazing education and doing the treatment with folks. So we moved to Jefferson County, Bear Creek Greenbelt. So you can see here there's a mix of signs and cameras. So we're trying to do the signs for education and cameras for capturing that on-trail, off-trail coyote activity. And then Crown Hill. So you can see how those were laid out for the study. And there's, that's Belmar, right? Yes, Belmar. So one of the things we found really interesting was, I love putting people's comments up here because then I just don't have to say it, but The idea is in this survey that went out, we got a lot of people commenting back, and this is actually a poster from a hazing clinic that Ashley and I put together at a neighborhood in Aurora that was having really high conflict levels. And you can see somebody just wrote across it, "Leave them alone." So one of the first things we found out from our public feedback about this, and this goes to human dimensions, I think, a little bit, is that hazing equals hating. So you can see some people are like, "What the hell? This is absurd and cruel. I'm calling PETA. I think you're wrong. I like coyotes." I'm like, "I do too." So it was really interesting to read some of these comments because they basically equated what we are doing with cruelty and hate towards coyotes. We also had people that were very confused. What in the world does haze mean in relation to a coyote? What do they want us, why do they want us to haze coyotes? Seriously, is this a proven effective way to deal with the problem, and what specifically is the problem? So again, these are folks that are like, "I don't even know why you're asking me to do this." So I don't know if they've been checked out or what, but we probably needed to do a better job of explaining why we're asking people to haze. So then there were some alternate theories. I found these fascinating. So one was, in my experience, hazing tends to make coyotes more aggressive. The best way to control them is to reduce their population. Then, of course, is the little-known chicken-coyote safety connection. This one comes from Lakewood, so we do not need to public fund a coyote study to determine we have a coyote problem. It's obvious what's happened. Lakewood City Council has invited this by providing a smorgasbord of chickens. We now have coyotes roaming the neighborhood at all hours, and it is unsafe to walk. Thank you, Lakewood City Council. I know there's a Lakewood City Council person in here. Yes, right there. Yes. So, were you aware of this theory? Were you aware of this theory, the chicken safety connection? Okay, I figured you had. I had the feeling this individual had probably been in touch with you previously. So, and then I thought this last one was fascinating. As far as I know, coyotes only act aggressively in Boulder. Didn't know that. So again, these alternate theories were amusing and also, again, enlightening, because you look at this and you think, oh my goodness, people, I go back to my foundation, which is folks need some education about what's going on here. And then there was just the general opportunity to vent. I hate coyotes, period. They're too big a predator to be tolerated in the city. It's hard working keeping my cat inside, but I fear for his life if he escapes. He's tearing up my furniture and peeing on the carpet in frustration at being kept in all the time. Thank you for sharing. Also, this is another one, relocate or kill coyotes that get too close to humans. People just want to walk their dogs and otherwise enjoys the park with their families, not be asked to train coyotes. So this goes back to that attitude of, I just want to walk my dog. I'm freaking not training any coyotes today. Thank you. They are a pest, and they roam the surrounding neighborhood every night, killing dogs and cats and chickens, and are a hazard to small children. And this was my favorite. The majority of dog owners that I've seen use the park are morons. Countless owners take their dog out to play with the coyotes. Can you put up signs encouraging people to haze these stupid dog owners? If we only could. So then there's the final one, the conspiracy theory. First, Jefferson County wanted to pave the park over to provide children play spaces. Now you want us to harass wildlife. Again, mixing that word, harass and haze. No, again, no. Leave the park and its environment alone, and then impeach your board. So we got all kinds of stuff, but the cool stuff, the meat of the survey results, and this is where it gets really cool, or not so cool, or disheartening, however you want to look at it. So first question we asked were, while the signs were up, did you see any coyotes at Crown Hill? And about 25% of the folks saw a coyote at Crown Hill. So that's a yes. If you saw the coyotes while the signs were up, did you haze it? Majority of the people said no. So does that mean we failed? I don't know. So you can take that. That was part of the data. If you saw a coyote while the signs were up, did you report it? Oh, heck no. So again, goes back to that thing that you can't really get people to report. So that's why citizen scientists are great, because they do the reporting, you don't have to be asked. So then, this was the interesting one. If you see a coyote at Crown Hill in the future, would you haze it? Yes. So one of the things that's really interesting about that is kind of spelling out things are not looking real good, like maybe we didn't have an impact at all, and then you get to this question and they're like, oh yeah, I will. But what's the problem with that? When you ask people to self-report, what do a lot of people do? Oh, this is what they want to hear. I'm going to pass this test. So they might say yes, but I thought that was encouraging, that if they see a coyote in the future at Crown Hill, they would haze it. So did the effort of the National Wildlife Research Center encourage you to public haze coyotes influence whether or not you would do so? And the majority of the people said yes. So again, it's kind of an interesting thing where we really tried to focus in on, did this change human behavior? And while some of the survey results said it didn't, but some of the survey results indicated that, yeah, it kind of did change my, not my values, but perhaps maybe some of my attitudes or some of my beliefs or some of my behaviors, okay? So when we looked at camera results, those were not conclusive, because we've got here, Van Bibber was one of our control sites, and you can see that some of the off-trail use did increase, on-trail use stayed the same, but that's a treatment site. So when you look at Crown Hill, there was pretty much no change at all, okay? When you look at Bear Creek, our on-trail use for coyotes kind of went down, but it's not significant. And then the off-trail use pretty much remained the same. So here's some photos. And I actually want to address this one specifically, because if you look closely at this photo, there's something wrong with these coyotes. What is it? Ready to see it? Look at the tails. Are these healthy coyotes? They're mangy. So one of the things that I want to go back to is one of the challenges on the coyote side is if there are other factors operating, like if these coyotes have a disease on board, mange on board, is that changing their behavior in ways that hazing has nothing to do with? You know, because coyotes that have mange have a different energy budget. They're struggling with their energy budget, so would that change their behavior? But these are two coyotes that are on a trail at 7:09 in the morning. Is that conflict behavior? Do coyotes use trails? Why do they use trails? Easy, energy budget. Easy, what else? Trails are the stink capital of the United States. So if you are a coyote and you're into keeping your territory, where are you going to be marking a lot? Like my dog and the coyote at Tomlinson Park have this thing right now. So the coyote at Tomlinson Park poops on the trail during the night, and my dog comes and pees on it in the morning. And so they have this thing going on where it's back and forth. So I think coyotes are sort of compelled to the trail whether they want to be or not, because they want to scent mark, or it's where there's a lot going on. So this is tough to see because of the lighting, but this is a coyote, this is Crown Hill, and it's on the trail at 6:38 in the morning. Again, I'm not sure that I would call this conflict behavior. If there's not people around and it's on the trail, that may just be energy-saving behavior, or it may be compelling because there's been a dog that's urinated there, it wants to scent mark. Here's one of my favorite pictures of all. So here's a coyote walking down the trail at Crown Hill at 7:30 in the morning. Again, does that indicate that hazing didn't work? I don't know, because I think this trail use by coyotes is something that goes beyond whether they're concerned about the presence or absence of people. So here's a couple more coyotes on a social trail, but that's kind of cool. You can see the lights in the background. So that's 4:14 in the morning. A coyote on the trail at 4:14 in the morning, I'm not too concerned about, because there's not going to be a lot of people at the park at that time. And again, here's some coyotes in a horrible winter storm on the trail. The trail's been plowed, so kind of easier to do, right? So again, this trail, not trail thing, it was one of those things that as we were sort of trying to figure out how do we measure coyote behavior changes, that was one thing that bubbled to the surface. So here's a coyote that was not on trail, 6:30 in the morning. That's a non-conflict thing completely. Again, coyote not on the trail. So these are some of the photos that were taken as we had these cameras set up for the study. And there's one with the mangy tail. So again, I would look at that as that animal, because it's got some other things going on, can we even really use that as an animal to talk about whether hazing is going to work or not, because it's got a lot of other energy challenges. So conclusions, or more accurately, initial thoughts, because I think we have a lot to work to do on this and looking at what happened and what didn't happen and how do we better isolate hazing at the community level to figure out what works and what doesn't. The good news, and these are direct quotations from the survey, I am more likely to do it because you say it will help coyotes, but it will be difficult because it seems mean. That's valid, right? So what does that tell us we need to work on? Helping people understand that hazing coyotes is actually helpful to the coyotes. It doesn't hurt them, it's helpful. I don't want anything bad to happen to the coyotes, so I will try to scare them away. I'm more likely to haze them in order to protect them from humans. So we got a lot of these sort of responses. And then this last one I thought was pretty cool. Actually, I hazed coyotes before the efforts, but I believe the effort will be worthwhile for others who don't know what to do. That's the good news. On the bad news side, We've got some other folks who chimed in and said it doesn't work. Eventually, we're going to see what has happened in other areas. Children have been bitten on public trails. And that goes back to this idea that hazing is a management tool. Is it the serve all or fix all or silver bullet tool? Probably not. Probably doesn't work in all situations. And it goes back again to those challenges on the coyote side. And then lastly, here's one person. They should be shot or transferred to another location. There is no need for them to be at this lake. That goes back to, oh my goodness, I need to sit down with this person and have this talk about, first of all, there will always be coyotes at Crown Hill. You can't stop coyotes from being at Crown Hill. It's great habitat. They're going to live here. But also, to transfer into Jerry's talk, there's a lot of folks in the Denver metro area that don't even understand the laws and the regulations that overlay coyote management. So in conclusion, I just want to say the hazing study was very educational for all of us. It was tough. It was really tough to isolate the coyote behavior and the human behavior, but I think the survey results, in my mind, because I'm tragically optimistic, were, I think, pointing towards the idea that this sort of community education can work. We just need to fine-tune our tools probably a little bit. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jerry to talk about laws and regulations and coyote management.